Do you need a therapist? Because I do. Can't find one, can't afford one. There's none in the area that I know of. And I need help now, not in 6 months' time when I get to the top of the wait list. I'm just I'm just too beat down to even find the fight to find somebody. There's a massive gap between those who get mental health help and those who need it. I want to explore it with you. Supportive psychological services like counseling or group therapy are still first in line treatment for anyone who is diagnosed with a mental health disorder. And of the total global population, about 50% of the population will at some point be diagnosable to a mental health disorder. And of that, 75 to 90% will never even be offered mental health services of any kind. And take that into account that 90% of mental health professionals, of all of them, 90% work with just 10% of the global population. So there will never be enough counselors to meet the need for mental health support in the globe. So, how does counseling and psychology reconcile that? Rather than just having the answer be more counselors and psychologists, how can counseling and psychology and counseling and psychologists open their mind and just consider how they can bridge the gap a little bit more on the massive need and the very small impact? There's a program called Mental Health First Aid, and it aims to help people better when they're dealing with mental health crisis. Essentially, it's open program for society for people to come and learn how to identify, learn some of the mental health language, and then how to be a supportive person to help family members, friends, community members, coworkers through mental health crisis. It's not a replacement for counseling. In fact, one of its overall goals is to help people through their mental health crisis, but to also help people get mental health treatment through counseling or group or something that works for them. And so it kind of works in a little more of an egalitarian way, seeing the broad stroke of society and the hunger there is for mental health understanding and mental health treatment. It's definitely more scientific than a lot of other programs out there. And it has had a lot of success. About 8 million people the world over have done the program. It's in about 30 different countries. And for counseling and counselors and psychologists who have ears to hear, it has some messages for us. Mental health literacy is one of the highest predictors of overall health. And these programs that teach mental health literacy help people understand, destigmatize, and they're just in general effective at helping people help other people and get the treatment that they need in the long run. It also it meets a need. Society has shown us that even through the mental health movement on social media, there's a lot of hunger for mental health understanding. That counseling and psychology, when it's focused on one to one therapy, it will never actually be able to meet that need, the massive amount of need. And so it meets a general need for people to make sense of their brains and make sense of how best to help those around them when they're dealing with mental health crisis. It's accessible. In Canada and throughout the world, access to counseling and psychology is extremely low. And so when most people need a counselor, they're generally not there. But you know who is there? Friends, family, the community they create around them. They're there and can be a help through that time of crisis. It's also really well resourced. While a lot of people can't afford counseling, and counseling and therapy is generally moving to more of a luxury for the rich rather than a basic human right, they can afford to talk to and connect to their local communities and connect to their friends and family, those are around them. It's decentralized. Counseling and psychotherapy generally do really well for people. But when supportive counseling is in the hands of only a very few very educated individuals, there's a loss of impact. Mental health first aid opens up the door to task sharing, specialist to non specialist role, recognizing that some people are not interested in counseling or will never get to counseling. And community members, lay people can play a part. And so there's more of a task sharing, consultative role for counselors and psychologists to play alongside lay people. Mental health first aid also is more community involved. It moves beyond the client, counselor, individualistic kind of set, and engages the whole community, involves a whole partnership, and it works to nurture and create healthy attachments and helpful supportive bonds between community members, between family members, between coworkers, even building attachment and relationships so that change can happen from within. Lastly, mental health first aid is culturally responsive. And I say that recognizing that it comes from a white Western psychology frame of mind. But because of its scientific nature, there is a peer reviewed process that goes into this. And so when a country or community requests mental health first aid for that specific country and community, the Delphi report is used, collecting psychologists and counselors and those with mental health lived experience from that community and culture to provide a consensus and report back to the mental health first aid. So, what recovery would look like, what problematic kind of pieces for mental health there are, destigmatization, that community and culture provides feedback before that mental health first aid program is applied and implemented into that community. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I hope you're able to learn something about mental health first aid, maybe be inspired to add it to your practice for the future, and if not, to consider some of the things that we can do to make counseling and therapy more equitable, considering the mental health gap. Thanks much. Peace.